Hi, you are watching Reddit Stories. So, I guess this is more for me than for anyone else. I've never posted on Reddit before, and I'm not expecting sympathy or advice. I just need to get this out of my system. You ever feel like your life was a puzzle, and you didn't even know there were pieces missing until they fell into your lap one by one? That's what this was. A slow, methodical, brutal unraveling. And it all started with a text message at 3:17 a.m. Back then, I was 29, living in a mid-sized city in Ohio, working as a data analyst at a healthcare tech firm. I had a comfortable routine, good friends, a golden retriever named Scout, and a girlfriend I thought I'd marry. Her name was Emily. Emily and I had been together for 3 years. She was a freelance photographer independent, creative, the kind of person who always found beauty in the mundane. I admired that. She'd take a photo of a coffee cup and somehow make it look like a philosophical statement. I worked with numbers, with absolutes. She worked in shades of gray. We balanced each other. Or so I thought. There weren't red flags at first. That's what makes it hard to process. People always say hindsight is 20/20, but I've stared at the past and still can't see where it shifted. Emily would sometimes go on photography trips, nothing extravagant, local nature parks, old buildings, sometimes neighboring cities. She had a small but loyal Instagram following, and I supported her hustle. If she was gone overnight, I didn't question it. Why would I? Trust is kind of a prerequisite for loving someone. Anyway, back to the text. 3:17 a.m. I was asleep. My phone buzzed. Scout growled. That was weird. He never growled unless someone was near the house. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Mitch, Studio. The message preview read, "I'm not covering for you anymore. Tell him or I will." My stomach dropped in that cartoonish, Wile E. Coyote way, where everything keeps falling but never lands. I opened it. There was another message below. He deserves to know this isn't right. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Who was Mitch? What wasn't right? Emily was sleeping beside me, her face buried in my shoulder, breathing softly. Peaceful. Innocent. The next morning, I didn't mention the message. I wish I could say I confronted her like a man, that I stood up and demanded the truth. But I didn't. I let it fester. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe a mix-up. Maybe Mitch was drunk. Maybe he meant to message someone else. I watched her that morning as she made coffee. She hummed, she smiled. She kissed me on the cheek and said she was heading to a shoot downtown. I stared at her car until it turned the corner. Then I texted Mitch. Just one line. Tell me everything. 10 minutes later, he called. And that was the first twist. Mitch wasn't just a coworker. He was her ex, her recent ex, as in, they'd broken up a month before she and I started dating. According to him, they had still been hooking up for at least the first year of our relationship. He stopped when he realized she was serious about me, or at least said she was. I asked him why he was telling me now. He said he ran into Emily the night before. She was with someone else, not me, not Mitch, someone new. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I thanked him, hung up, and sat on the floor with Scout's head in my lap for 2 hours. When Emily got home that night, I pretended everything was fine. That was my mistake. I should have ended it then. But I wanted answers. I wanted to catch her. I wanted proof, or maybe I just wanted closure. Instead, I started doing something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating the woman I loved. I went through old emails, texts, calendars. I noticed inconsistencies, shoots she claimed to have, that never showed up on her portfolio. Hotels booked under her name in cities she never mentioned visiting. A second Instagram account under a different name with more provocative photos. That one was the hardest to find, buried in the metadata of a picture she accidentally sent me a year prior. It was like peeling back layers of someone who had never existed. 3 weeks later, I confronted her. She denied it, of course. Then she cried. Then she blamed me for not being adventurous, for being too safe, for never challenging her creatively. All of it was smoke. She packed a bag and left that night. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. A week later, I got a letter, not an email. A handwritten letter with no return address. Inside were 3 Polaroids and a note that just said, "Ask her about the cabin." The photos were old, at least a year or two. Emily and a man I didn't recognize, standing in front of a small cabin in the woods. One photo showed them kissing. Another had them laughing in what looked like a makeshift darkroom. The third was worse. It was a group photo Emily, the man, and someone else with their face scribbled out in black marker. The ink was still fresh. I looked closer at the photo. In the corner was a date, 1/1/3/22. That was the weekend she said she was visiting her aunt in Chicago. I did what any logical person would do. I went looking for the cabin. That's when things stopped being about cheating and started being something else entirely. So here I was, sitting at my kitchen table with 3 Polaroids, a cryptic note, and a growing pit in my stomach. I kept staring at that last photo, the one with the face scribbled out. Why would someone do that? I zoomed in with my phone. The person's build was masculine, tall, broad shoulders. The way Emily was angled, she had her hand lightly on his arm. The man next to her, the one not scribbled out, looked like a younger guy, maybe early 20s. Probably the photographer. The one with the blacked out face? I had no idea. That night I called Emily. I shouldn't have. But curiosity is a hell of a drug. She didn't pick up. So I did the next best thing. I texted her. "What happened at the cabin?" She replied 4 minutes later, "What are you talking about?" I sent her a photo of the Polaroids. No reply. 10 minutes passed. Then she blocked me. No typing bubble, no explanation. Just silence. At that point, I couldn't leave it alone. I had her old itinerary from a past shoot where she scribbled down a few location scouting spots. One of them was a place called Wrenwood, a small town 2 hours east of me. I remembered it because she had gushed about the name sounding like something from a fairy tale. That was where I started. Saturday morning, I packed up Scout, filled a thermos, and drove out. Wrenwood was barely a dot on the map. One diner, a gas station with 1 pump, and a single motel with 7 rooms. The kind of place that hadn't changed since 1973. I pulled into the diner first, figuring locals might know about a cabin nearby. I showed the waitress the photo, the one without the scribbled face. She studied it for a long second. Then she looked at me, serious. "Where'd you get this?" I told her it was from a friend. She nodded slowly. "That's Marky's place." "Who's Marky?" "Used to be sheriff. Bought that land years back. Rented out the cabin to kids who wanted to get away for the weekend. Artists, photographers, that kind." My pulse picked up. "Is it still standing?" "Far as I know, he died last spring. Heart failure. Land's just sitting there now." She scribbled the directions on a napkin and warned me to be careful. The road was mostly gravel and prone to flooding. I thanked her, tipped too much, and left. It took me another 45 minutes to reach the cabin. She wasn't kidding. The road was more pothole than pavement, and my car protested every inch. The cabin was surreal, exactly like the photo. A-frame, 1-story, paint peeling off the trim, surrounded by pine and silence. A rusted mailbox at the end of the drive said Marky, no numbers. Scout barked once. I hushed him. I wasn't sure what I expected. A confession nailed to the door? A diary? A ghost? The door was unlocked. I stepped in. Dust hung in the air like fog. Everything smelled old mold, cedar, stale cigarettes. There were remnants of people. A cracked coffee mug, a broken camera tripod, a box of film negatives that looked half-chewed by mice. Then I found something that stopped me cold. A small wall in the back was covered with photographs, taped, pinned, layered. All different people, all different poses. Some smiling, some candid. All of them taken in this cabin or just outside it. Most were black and white. None were labeled, except one. Emily. Pinned dead center. Her hair was longer, curled. She was sitting cross-legged on a rug, laughing at something out of frame. A red string ran from her photo to two others, connecting them like a conspiracy board. One of the photos was the guy from the Polaroid, the one not scribbled out. The other was the scribbled man. But this time, his face wasn't hidden. I recognized him instantly. It was my coworker, James. I dropped the photo. James and I had worked together for 4 years. He was in marketing, engaged, quiet. Always wore sweaters, even in summer. We got drinks together after work sometimes. James with Emily. What the hell? I took pictures of everything. Grabbed the 3 photos connected by the red string and left. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced. I drank. I tried to calm myself down. My head felt like it was full of bees. At 2:13 a.m., I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 10 seconds long. Static. Then a whisper. She never left the cabin. I played the voicemail at least 20 times. The static wasn't just noise. It was deliberate, like it had been added, not caused. And the whisper at the end? She never left the cabin. But those 5 words became a mantra of obsession. I tried running the audio through filters, online voice analysis tools, nothing worked. No caller ID, no metadata. Whoever sent that message didn't want to be found. And yet, I couldn't stop listening. Emily had left the cabin, right? I saw her. I lived with her. She ate oatmeal and forgot to screw the cap back on the toothpaste. She didn't live in some cursed memory in a forest. So what did the message mean? The next day at work, I couldn't concentrate. I stared at James across the office, typing away, headphones in, like none of this touched him, like he wasn't part of this impossible puzzle. I wanted to walk over and demand answers. But how do you ask a coworker, "Hey, were you sleeping with my girlfriend in a cabin run by a dead sheriff?" Instead, I waited until lunch and followed him. He went to a nearby Thai place, grabbed a seat by the window, and ordered the same red curry he always did. I took the booth behind him. Once he was halfway through his meal, I stood and sat down across from him without asking. His expression was priceless. Shock, then confusion, then a flicker of guilt he couldn't hide fast enough. "Hey man, what's up?" I leaned forward. "Renwood, the cabin. Emily." His fork froze halfway to his mouth. "I don't know what you're talking about." His voice was too high, too rehearsed. I pulled my phone out and laid it flat on the table. Opened the photo of him, Emily, and the other guy. Color drained from his face. "I want the truth," I said. "I'm not angry. I'm done being angry. But I need to know." He stared at the screen like it was cursed. Then, in the quietest voice I've ever heard from a grown man, he said, "It wasn't supposed to go like that." I didn't speak. I let the silence pull him deeper. He whispered, "We were part of this project. Art, we thought. Performance photography. She invited me. Said it was going to be something new, something no one had seen before. She was different out there. Cold, methodical. What happened at the cabin? She changed. His hands were shaking now. The last night we were there, I heard her arguing with someone outside, Not with Mitch. Someone else. I thought maybe she brought a local guy out. I didn't ask questions, but when I went outside later, she was gone. Gone? Vanished. No car, no phone. Just gone. The other said she must have walked to the nearest road and got picked up. But there was no trail, no footprints. Just that same cabin and the trees. I stared at him, trying to gauge whether he was insane or terrified. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. We left the next morning, and that night, she was in my apartment. I froze. She was standing in my kitchen like she'd never left. Same clothes, same everything. I asked her what the hell happened. You know what she said? I didn't breathe. She said, "He let me go this time." He looked up at me, eyes glassy. I never went back. I left without finishing my drink. That night, I took everything I'd collected, photos, voicemail, James's story, and tried to make sense of it. My whiteboard turned into something out of a crime thriller. String connecting names, places, dates, all revolving around Emily. That's when I remembered something. She used to talk in her sleep. Little things names, sometimes half sentences. I never paid attention before. But once, months ago, she had said something weird at around 3 a.m. I dug through my phone's voice memos. I used to record her out of amusement. I found one file titled 3 a.m. Murmur M. I played it. At first, soft breathing. Then her voice, "He said I can stay if I bring more." I stopped the recording. What the hell had she been involved in? That night, I had the first dream. I was standing outside the cabin. It was snowing, though it had been spring when I visited. Emily was inside, standing in the doorway, smiling. But her eyes were black, not bruised, not hollow, black. She raised her hand and pointed behind me. I turned around and saw myself, hanging from a tree. Then I woke up gasping. Scout was barking at the window. I looked outside. There were footprints in the snow. Except it hadn't snowed in weeks. The footprints were real. Not animal prints, not vague indentations. Clear human boot prints, starting from the edge of my backyard and ending under my bedroom window. Then, nothing. No return trail. Just a set of prints that arrived, watched, and vanished. I stood there for a long time, with a baseball bat in my hand and a gut full of ice. Scout wouldn't stop growling. I texted James, me. "Did she ever come to your window at night?" He replied instantly. James, "Yes, but it wasn't her." I didn't sleep after that. Over the next week, things escalated. I started receiving packages, no return address, just black boxes with no labels. The first one had a single thing inside, a VHS tape. The second, a page torn from a book I didn't recognize, circled with red ink that said, "The ones who wander never walk alone." The third package didn't contain anything. It just reeked of pine, smoke, and something metallic like blood. I don't even own a VHS player, so I drove to a pawn shop outside of town, bought one for $10, and brought it back to my apartment. I stared at that tape for a full hour before pressing play. The video was low-res, shaky like old home footage. It was the cabin. Same walls, same rug. The camera panned slowly across the interior. No people, just that same eerie silence. Then it cut to black. 5 seconds of nothing. Then it resumed. Now someone was holding the camera, walking through the woods at night. The flashlight beam jittered. The person was breathing hard. They turned towards something and stopped. There, in the clearing, stood Emily. Naked, motionless. Her mouth was open wider than it should have been, like unnaturally wide. She turned her head to face the camera. Then she screamed. The tape ended there. At that point, I was seriously questioning my sanity. Was this some elaborate prank? An art experiment? A breakdown? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. Emily wasn't just cheating. She had led me, maybe all of us, into something much worse. I took time off work, told HR I was handling a family emergency. I didn't want to be around James. I didn't want to see anyone. Scout and I drove back out to Renwood, this time with supplies, gloves, a crowbar, a flashlight, a burner phone, and a portable generator. My plan was simple: tear the cabin apart and find everything. When I arrived, it was already dusk. The woods were still. No wind, no birds, just that same awful quiet. I went in, started with the floorboards. They were weak and moldy. Underneath, I found damp insulation and a whole family of mice, but also a locked metal box. It took me 30 minutes to pry it open. Inside were 6 black and white photos, all of Emily. But each one was slightly wrong. In one, her eyes were scratched out. In another, her mouth was stitched shut with what looked like actual thread. The third had no shadow. The rest were even worse. In the last photo, Emily was standing in a group of 5 people. One of them was the younger guy from the Polaroid. Another was clearly James. The other 2, no clue. But one was holding a camera, and the other was wearing what looked like a mask, something antlered, primitive, almost tribal. On the back of the photo was one handwritten word: offering. That night, I slept in the car with Scout in the back seat. I dreamed again. This time, I was inside the cabin. The fire was roaring. Emily was there, sitting at the table, but she wasn't facing me. Her voice came out slow, like it was being translated through static. "You weren't chosen." She turned, and her face was gone. Just skin-stretched, empty, blank. "You followed the trail." I woke up to Scout barking furiously. The cabin door was open. I was sure I'd locked it. I grabbed my flashlight and approached slowly, heart pounding. Inside, everything looked the same, except on the table, there was a new object. A Polaroid camera, fresh film, one sheet ejected already. I picked it up. It was a photo of me, standing in the doorway, taken from inside. But I hadn't taken it. And that's when I saw the note scrawled on the back in Emily's handwriting. "Now it's your turn." I left the cabin at dawn, teeth clenched and fingers numb, the Polaroid still burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't speak. Scout whimpered the whole ride home like he could feel something had followed us. Because something had. The air in my apartment was wrong, still but heavy. Like someone was holding their breath in the next room. I did a full sweep nothing there. But the Polaroid camera? It was now sitting on my kitchen counter. I hadn't brought it back. I packed a bag and left. Checked into a cheap motel 30 minutes out of town, a place with paper-thin walls and a clerk who didn't ask questions. I needed time to think. I laid everything out across the bed photos, notes, tapes, the burned VHS, and every scrap of Emily I had left. That's when I noticed something in the group. Polaroid again. In the top left corner, nearly cropped out, was a carved symbol on the cabin wall, a circle with 4 lines radiating outward. I'd seen it before. I checked the torn book page I received in one of the packages. The red circle that surrounded the quote? Same symbol. I went full research mode. Forums, archived cult databases, local legends, you name it, and I found it. Not in any official record, but in a forum thread on a now-defunct paranormal site, archived deep in the Wayback Machine. A woman from Indiana posted it in 2012 under the thread title, "The Circle That Watches." She claimed her sister had vanished after spending time with a group of experimental artists who met in the woods, using cabins as sacred spaces. They photographed each other, never spoke on camera, and always left behind symbols carved in door frames or on trees. Their belief? That cameras didn't capture souls. They invited something through. They believed you could feed it, or barter with it, or worse, become its vessel. The poster ended her thread by saying, "My sister came back." But it wasn't her. She just watched me, like I was the TV and she was on the couch. The thread ended there. No replies, no updates. It was like staring at a ghost. I called James. He didn't answer. So I drove to his apartment. Lights were off, blinds drawn. I knocked. No reply. I called again. That's when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic clicking from inside, like a camera shutter. Over and over. I kicked in the door. James was in his living room, standing in the center of a salt circle, eyes rolled back, muttering the same phrase again and again. The eyes must not close. Click, click, click. He was holding the Polaroid camera. I didn't go near him. I backed out, called 911, and waited. When the paramedics arrived, they couldn't get him to respond. He just kept muttering that same line. They took him away. And I went back to Renwood. It was raining when I arrived. Thunder echoed through the trees like distant growls. I parked the car and walked up the drive toward the cabin one last time. It wasn't abandoned anymore. There were lights inside, and shadows moving. I don't know why I kept going. Maybe I needed the ending. Maybe I'd already lost too much. Maybe the cabin didn't let you leave once it had your name. I stepped inside. She was there, Emily, or something wearing Emily's skin. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by candles, wearing the same clothes she wore in the old Polaroid, the one with the 3 of them at the cabin. She looked up at me and smiled. You'd think I would have screamed, or cried, or run. But I didn't. Because I finally understood. She was never mine. She never betrayed me in the traditional sense. What she did was so much worse. She used me, all of us, to feed something, to trade something, to open a door. Why? I asked. Her voice was calm, like a librarian explaining overdue fines. They promised to keep me here, to show me the layers, but I had to bring others. She held up a photo of me, taken earlier that day, asleep in the motel bed. They wanted you. I stalled. I bought time. I liked you. My hands were shaking. I never mattered to you. She looked at me with those black eyes and tilted her head. You were beautiful when you trusted me. I stepped back. She stood. Something behind her shifted in the air, like the outline of a doorway made from shadow and breath. Then she said, "You can leave, but not with all of yourself." I ran. I don't remember driving back. All I know is I woke up in my apartment, no memory of the hours in between. Scout was gone. So were the photos, the tapes, everything. All I had left was a single Polaroid sitting on my desk. A photo of me standing in front of the cabin. Smiling, but I don't remember smiling. I don't remember anyone taking that picture. And the worst part? In the bottom right corner, written in a shaky black pen, were 3 words. You let her. After that night, I stopped sleeping. Not out of fear, but out of certainty that if I closed my eyes long enough, I'd open them in the cabin. And I wasn't sure I'd come back. Work didn't call. Friends didn't text. My phone stopped getting signal altogether. I wasn't just isolated, I was disconnected, like I'd slipped out of the grid somehow. Slipped out of... The Polaroid stayed on my desk, and every morning I swore it changed. At first, the trees behind me looked darker. Then a shadow appeared behind my shoulder. Then my eyes went black in the photo, like hers. A week later, a plain manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a USB stick, wrapped in old flannel. I almost didn't open it, but of course I did. Inside one file, a folder titled Exposures, hundreds of photos, all of me, sleeping, walking scout, shopping for groceries, sitting in my office, standing in the shower, and then the last folder, before. I clicked it open. The pictures were old. Me in college, me at 19, me and a girl I dated briefly at 17. All taken from a distance, all candid, all before I ever met Emily. Only I hadn't known anyone was taking pictures. My voice caught in my throat. She'd been watching me for years, before we met, before I knew her name. Before she introduced herself at that downtown art gallery, by chance, when I knocked over a glass of wine and she laughed and handed me a napkin. It wasn't an accident. She had planned it, all of it. I shut my laptop and vomited in the sink. That night, I got another voicemail. No number, no metadata, just the voice. Not Emily's, mine, screaming, begging. And in the background, the camera shutter, over and over. I tried to burn the Polaroid. It wouldn't catch. I soaked it in lighter fluid, set it on fire, and watched it curl and blacken, and when the flames went out, it was untouched. I left it outside in the rain. It was dry the next morning. I threw it into a dumpster. It was back on my desk the next day. Each time, a new change. Now, the version of me in the photo wasn't standing in front of the cabin anymore. He was inside it, looking out the window, smiling. I reached out to Mitch one last time. No answer. A few days later, his obituary appeared online. No cause of death listed. One morning, I woke up to the sound of the Polaroid camera clicking from the other room. I didn't own film anymore. I didn't own batteries. And the shutter kept going. Click, click, click. I walked into the living room. The lights were off. The camera was floating, just slightly in the middle of the air. It dropped the last photo onto the floor as I stepped in. I picked it up. It was a picture of me, but not recent. It was the moment I opened the first package, a lifetime ago, taken from behind, and this time there was something in the background, a figure, watching me through the window. I zoomed in, Emily, eyes black, smile wide, but that's not what stopped my heart. In the reflection of the glass beside her, barely visible, was another face, mine. Only it wasn't my expression. It was gleeful, hungry. That's when it hit me. The last twist. The betrayal that hurt the most. It wasn't Emily who let it in. It was me. Somewhere along the way when I obsessed, when I followed her back to the cabin, when I tried to destroy the photo, when I watched the tape, I crossed the line. I invited it. She was never the vessel. I am. Now I hear the camera every night. Click, click, click. The photos keep appearing, each one a little closer, a little darker. Scout never came back. My eyes in the mirror don't always match. Sometimes they lag. Sometimes they look at me. I tried moving, didn't matter. The cabin comes with me. It's inside now. And Emily? She doesn't visit anymore. She doesn't need to. Because every time I sleep, I dream of her smile. And every time I wake up, I'm one frame closer to being part of the wall. If you're reading this, and you've seen her too, I have one piece of advice. Don't take the picture. No matter how much you want to understand her, no matter how beautiful she looks when she asks, if you press that shutter, you'll never stop. Not until you belong to her. Not until he smiles through your face. Not until someone else follows your trail, because now it's your turn. Click.